Oh, yeah. Morning, morning, my friends, and welcome with breakfast with a Fatman. Though by now I probably changed my moniker to the Lazy GM. Still a Fatman here. Right? I've done a number of reviews on Middle Earth this morning. Hence why there were probably half a dozen of these wearing the same shirt. Uh, wife's getting ready to get up back there, so uh, get this one done and move on. Uh, as I was doing a couple of the MERP ones, the topic resurfaced itself. One that sees a lot of views, a lot of discussion on various blogs and channels. The RPG Brigades channel, I've seen this and engaged in this conversation at least a half dozen times now in the past 6 months. We're talking about the economy of your game world. Uh, Probably one of the less popular aspects from game design perspective for most players or most GMs is trying to come up with a good balance. How do we mediate the Monty Haul or Dragon Hoard Treasure mindset with the average day-to-day costs of living and expenses? I've been in so many of these game situations over the last 40 years that I have probably tried just about all the variants I could have come up with and think of on my own, and a few others that belong to other people, and how we vary this stuff. There's this very disparate, wide gap between in the economy system of this genre, and whereas we want to stay within character of the the Middle Ages mindset, the hack and slash pre-middle was that Hyboria mindset, where everybody's broke or poor, or the average Joe Flube has the money of. We do trade and barter at most levels of the economy. The lion's share of people are dealing in copper and tin pieces or bronze pieces. The high-end $100 bill of the era would be the gold piece. So the $20 bill is the silver piece. That's basically. But most people are living like we did 100 years ago, where the dollar is the equivalent of $100 today, and so it went a long way. Whereas this other side of the coin is, as the adventurers, as we go and we haul our loot and count our pennies and our gemstones, well, we end up with a huge uh, miss. Sorry, I'm having trouble coming out with the word. A huge disparage, a huge difference between how much they get and how much they should be able to have to spend. The average adventure and mini games I've played and I've ran, where they're walking around with a small kingdom as a ransom in their damn pouch. Matter of fact, they get so big that they all want bags of holding. Come on, how many as GMs? How many times have you had everybody in your group have a bag of holding? Because in some cases, multiple bags of holdings are there and thereof, because the sheer amount of loot and stuff they lug around, they can't carry it. They can't justify carrying it. So, especially if you're running anything vaguely mechanic based, where your size and strength determines how much poundage your character can lug around without starting to take some significant penalties. And at the same time, we spend a lot of effort to reward our players lavishly, probably too lavishly. I've had this. My friend Buzzface and I had several discussions, in some cases heated, when he was GMing, and he would say, well, because the Dungeon Master's Guide says, based on your level, this is how many tens of thousands of gold pieces you should get. And I tried to get him to understand that that was a guideline, not a mandate. Plus, the odds of you running across, clearing out a giant's hole and discovering 20 different magical rings, and because that's the way you rolled it out of the GM guide, is ludicrous. I'm sorry, but it's crazy. And at this point, you're wealthier than any kingdom in the neighborhood. And in truth, that should lead to a lot of potential problems by itself. The tax collector from the local king should be showing up on your trail, and perhaps a contingent of guardsmen to protect him, saying, "We want our cut. We want our percentage." Not to mention every bandit leader in the countryside homing in on you should be able to get a day's rest, a nice rest, without you being somebody trying to lighten your load, so to speak. And if you want to run a campaign that way, hey, it'll be a busy campaign if you really want to go that route, right? But meanwhile, you go into town, and the average person isn't lugging a handful of gold pieces around. You tip somebody, you tip that barmaid a gold piece, and you basically give her an entire year's worth of wages in one go. And if you figure that only 1% and 1% of these would-be adventurers do that, you're going to be a wealthy individual in a short time. Looking at the economy of the local community, it should not float that way. Why shouldn't we be using copper and silver pieces like they do, like the books imply they should? Well, then how do you find a balance, right? You want to, like I said, you want to reward these people. Plus, there's that value factor. Well, what's the value of a +2 sword, the flaming sword? Is it worth 10,000 gold pieces? Okay, where do you sell it? Who do you sell it to? You're going to walk into the average small village of 500 people or less, and I've got the books on I've got several source books that deal with that sort of thing, or mention it. And the GM guide, the old versions at least did. So you look in there, it talks about the economy, what you should be at, what the market should bear. And the truth of the matter is, you shouldn't be anybody in a town of 500 or less that has the finances to purchase that sword. Steal it, cajole it out of you, take it from you, maybe different, but to outright pay you hard cash for it? No. At best, you should maybe find somebody who has something who's willing to trade. Look, I got 2 magic bags holding. Let me trade you for your sword, right? Come on. I get it. It's an accounting thing. It's another way of showing, other than experience, to showing we're advancing and that we're getting better at what we do. And we want the gold, for the most part, to purchase better magic items or other stuff. And for some character classes, and like the wizard, you need a hefty payout because your components, or especially the rare and exotic stuff, are going to be expensive. But there's your checks and balances, right? At the same time, we're back to that. I can live like a king in any town or village I go to because I make one significant haul. And how do you prevent your characters from getting this mindset that they're basically financially unassailable? I guess and I've heard it, everybody has different takes and different ways of dealing with it. Some just don't hand out the loot to that level. Others are very very creative in finding ways to make you spend your loot. One tactic, of course, is the inflation. A band of adventure rolls in 1,000 gold pieces or the equivalent thereof into a town of 500 people, whose the average, yearly economy is a couple hundred gold pieces. Well, suddenly inflation strikes. So where the local can buy a cup of beer for 5 copper, the venture suddenly finds itself being charged 5 gold pieces. And if the venture doesn't seem to care, I'll just throw that away. Well, then the local town's going to benefit from that. On the other hand, a miserly player is going to go, "That's absurd. The book says this." I said, "No, that's how the player character stuff. How do you know the books? How do you know what the local? No, the local market says you're a wealthy SOP, and they want their cut of it. They're going to get their cut one way or another. Well, help you relieve you of that burden of all that needing more than one bag of holding." And there's more than one way to get your loot too. I've had players do this. Well, you go in and basically strip everybody they come across, take all their mundane weapons and armor. That's where they want them damn bags of holding, so they can cram all those suits of chainmail in, haul them back to the local armory, and sell them. And we have mechanics for that in the GM guide and other books. What's the value of used armor? Well, 25% of the face value. And I argue that maybe even less than that. How much availability, you bring a lot of it in, the more you have, the less it's worth. That's just the way it works. Second is how badly damaged did you mangle and mutilate the guy that was wearing the armor? Well, that armor is probably full of holes and broken components and not so good a shape. So maybe it's only worth a tenth or 5% of its brand new value. But even then, you can still get a significant haul and live like a freaking king and well above your means, and at the same time. So how do you mitigate that as a GM? It's rough. It's hard. I don't have a solid answer for it. I can give you half dozen examples of ways I've tried to mitigate it, but it's hard to maintain it, right? Especially with the treasure list, and you look at I want this magic item, I want that magic item, I want this book, I want this, I want that, and the value of the item listed. And these guys, so now they've got a goal. I need to collect 50,000 gold pieces so I can get this helmet, whatever, or this magic wand. And my argument then should be, okay, let's see, you accumulate that wealth. Where the heck do you go to buy something like that? Or we have stores that sell this. We go into a city that, okay, I suppose if you went into a city to say the size of, the Invincible Overlords city from Judges Guild, or Waterdeep from Forgotten Realms, where the mean economy for the local community could be in the hundreds of thousands of gold pieces in a given year. A 50,000 gold piece item is a huge amount of money, even in that economy. So how many of those are laying around? 100? 300? Like just your basic ring of protection. I'll put two fingers up. It's, as it this ring finger here, whatever. Put that ring on your finger. And the value is what? 1,000 gold pieces, 500 gold pieces, 2,000 gold pieces according to the book. So what? We got hundreds of thousands of these things laying around in our economy. How heavy magic dominant society are you in? And then it goes hand in hand with when I say, gee, did you think that orc was running around with that ring of protection in his pocket, or wouldn't he have been wearing it? I think he'd have been wearing it. He's running around with a +2 axe. You don't use it. Hello? He's not lugging that stuff around like he's an idiot. Now, if it's a mindless beast and he ate it, that might be different. Okay, sure, we found the ring in his gut. How many players have you had that goes to that level? I'm so greedy that I'm going to take my skinning knife and gut that thing open to see what he might have eaten. The last adventures that weren't so lucky against this thing could still be digesting in its belly, and we might find some stuff. And lo and behold, you kind of like that argument with, all right, sure, let's take a, guess what? You found something, and you're thinking, how would you find it? Somebody that. Then I look at the item that rolls up, and I think, oh, I found a magical bag of holding, except it's been rendered useless because the creature chewed on it before it swallowed it, or pierced it, or it's been partially dissolved in its stomach. That's a kind of a cheesy way of, and your players will get upset about that after a while. Some of them might roll with it and laugh the first couple of times, but you use it too much, they start to get cheesed at you. As a GM, they want their loot. And as a player, I'm that same person. I want that stuff. I want to make my character better at what I want that character to do. And I want the means to do so. This is one of the reasons we go adventuring. This is one of the reasons we go hunt down things and try to get it. So, we're back to how do we find a good way to mediate the economy? How is it that, like I said, you go to the local tavern and a silver piece buys you a meal, and you're walking around with 1,000 gold pieces in your pocket? You could feed the entire town for 10 years based on that. Except if you were to do that, the economy would be unskewed, so inflation should kick in, and now the meal should cost 5 silver pieces because the tavern keeper still got to make a profit, and if you're paying for everybody, then who's paying for it? It's a tough call, and a lot of GMs, the players just simply ignore it. We don't care about that. Okay. So maybe that's because, like I said, I'm a mechanics-based individual. I love the mechanics to a certain degree because that's what they're for. I mean, we want to play within the framework of the game rules whenever possible. The old school system of mindset is in play here. I want to be in there as reasonably as close to what's intended as possible. So, as I tend to be a lot more tight-fisted on giving away loot. And as for magic items, well, yes, I'm guilty of trying to provide my players with things that are suitable for them. So we got a guy who's a specialist in archery, and part of the loot is a +3 longsword or a bow. Well, the other players, oh, I want that, or I want that. But most players get it. We're going to say, okay, Joe, you get this because that's to your character, right? Now now on the other hand, I like your +1 bow because it's better than the one I got. I mean, I'm not as good at archery as you, but I still get that bonus. There's an internal trading going on there. It's just like I'm a fan of damaging stuff. So the rules, we're back to the mechanics of the rules, but rules of common sense play out here too. Somebody drops a fireball on your group, or the mage misfires his own fireball. It's possible that a lot of your mundane stuff just got scorched. How good is your leather armor gonna stay? It has most of the stuff has hard points. It has hardness. It has hit points. It has the ability to take damage and be destroyed, and or make you spend money to get the stuff fixed if you're that keen on it, right? So back to that circle, that repeating circle here that keeps rolling around. How do you mediate the economy so it's reasonable, right? Well, I advocate repeatedly avoid the Monty Haul mindset. Avoid being Santa Claus. Don't give these people gobs of stuff. As a matter of fact, it's a quick way to get a min-max game going before you know it. Truth of the matter is, most of your characters, and you know this, are going to develop through development, through advancing experience. They're going to get better. They're going to get easier. It's going to be easier for them to defend themselves. They're going to become more powerful through feats and through raising in their stats and so on and so forth. So you don't need to load them up with a lot of magical items. They shouldn't need that. And if you play it that way from the get-go, they won't expect it. The players will not expect you to just unload on it every opportunity. On the other hand, if you want to be Monty Haul, be a meager Monty Haul. So, I get a treasure trove. You just found 500 copper pieces, and there's a couple silver and 3 gold. And after a while, the players start to see that as, hey, that's a lot. We can feed ourselves for a year in the local town just on this one haul. So we don't have to worry about that sort of thing no more. You still need your bag of holding because 500 copper pieces is still 500 copper pieces, right? That's a lot of coin to be lugging around weight-wise. So it ain't different from the 500 gold values difference, right? It's like conversions. I know a lot of players who like to convert their coinage into gemstones because you have far fewer gemstones in your pouch and their values are a lot more. And I like to be fluctuant on those. So you go from one community to the next. That value is not necessarily fixed. You can negotiate the value up and down if your players are willing to go that route or you want to spend the time. That's just my my opinion. It's one way of dealing with it. The second way of dealing with it is just be mindfully about the loot, the magic items, the awards. But I don't discourage the creativity on their part. So if they can't get their loot outright, and they can get it through lesser means. I'm going to skin the hides off these things because I know that magic users use certain components of this particular creature because it has value. Then let them go through the effort of trying to unload that material. There should be somebody in the local community that would be interested in it, but whether or not they can pay is another story. I try to avoid the outright, let's barter this for that kind of thing, unless it's between players, because it's hard to keep score of that sort of thing. It is. Although you can make an argument that I'll bring you this, and if you're, as a craftsman or tradesman, is willing to embellish my leather armor and make it look snazzier so I can get a bonus to my charisma or something in exchange for this 1,000 gold piece sword, I could see doing that, because at this point that craftsman's going to get some kind of heirloom to their family, or you're just passing the problem on to that guy. Let him figure out how to sell the damn thing. How's he going to find, somebody in his community with the pockets deep enough to pay for it? Truth is, you go to a small town and the economy doesn't hold true. You either got to lower your price. You're likely to sell that 1,000 gold piece sword for 100 in a town of 500 because you got one guy that's got the finances to pay for it. And that's only if you come down on the price. And oh my God, I've seen some players just the faces just go, get that long, disgusted look on their face. But it's worth $1,000. Sure is. 30 miles up the road, you can get to the next town that's a little bigger. Maybe you got a better luck there. How far are you willing to travel to sell your sword? There you go. My opinion, economy. I don't know how it works for you. I'm always interested. Throw your comments in. That'd be worthy of a discussion. I have plenty of them, but how do we tell other people how to get a good base, fair economy in our fantasy role-playing system, in our game world, without being ludicrously crazy? I mean, look at The Hobbit, Peter Jackson's version of The Hobbit, and the dwarven horde that Smog sits on. I'm saying serious. There's so much wealth there in Erebor. The wealth ceases to matter as wealth because it's meaningless. What do they do with it? What can they do with it? They're going to buy Gondor with it? They could, assuming Gondor wants to sell itself. But that's not what they're going to do. What do? They hoard it. There's a reason why rich people keep getting richer. Isn't that how the old montage goes?